The following program deals with a controversial subject. The theories expressed are not the only possible interpretation. Viewers are invited to make a judgment based on all available information. This program contains images which may be disturbing to younger or sensitive viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Tonight on In Search Of, a 19th century killer still stalks his victim through the rooms of a Kentucky dance club.
I believe somewhere on this property, Pearl Bryan's head is under this ground.
A woman bleeds incessantly from her hands and eyes. Is it a sign from God? We'll uncover the secret power of Stigmata. And Ghostbusters chase a crew of supernatural sailors. Prepare to board the haunted Hornet. And our expedition into the dark side of voodoo leads to one shocking conclusion. Zombies, the nightmarish creatures of film and legend, may be real. I'm Mitch Pileggi, and this is In Search Of. The stroke of an axe sends one innocent woman to her grave and two Satan-worshiping killers to the gallows. But the story doesn't end with their deaths. In western Kentucky, a housewife, a nightclub handyman, and a security guard are given front row tickets to the grim reprise of that violent crime. The stage, Mackey's Bar, where country music fans share the dance floor with ghosts.
I never did believe in ghosts or spirits, whatever, till that night.
I spun around, and there stood an image of a man. There's evil spirits on this earth, and I've experienced and seen it.
I came down here one night, and there was a man standing right there. It wasn't just like hearing a thump in the night. I actually seen a human form in a cloud shape.
Wilder, Kentucky. In 1978, Bobby Mackey purchased this century-old banquet hall to open a country and western music club where he could lead the band. But from the beginning, there was something very strange about Bobby Mackey's music world.
I never felt comfortable coming in here by myself. It just always felt like real cold and just so alone in here. It was so dark.
Bobby wasn't the only one that sensed something foreboding. Carl Lawson was hired to be the live-in caretaker for the club.
There's always been something here. This room, of all parts of this, this basement, has always had I could feel more activity in here.
During the long days and nights that Carl spent on the property, he would often have the feeling of being manipulated by dark spirits that were pulling him into the basement. Carl knew there was something terrible hidden under the floorboards.
I first got that little hole in the floor. I seen that it was hollow, and I didn't realize there was a well under there.
Lawson reported a foul stench and that he could hear the voice of a woman crying from deep within the well. Carl Lawson was tuning into the past. 100 years earlier, the building had been a ritual gathering place for a local band of Satanists. Writer Doug Hensley has long had an interest in the paranormal.
Devil worshippers came to that well ever so often and crawled down inside of it to worship Satan because of the blood spilled on this ground.
Hensley soon made a startling discovery that connected the music hall with one of the most shocking crimes in Kentucky history.
During my research at the library, I learned in 1896 a woman named Pearl Bryan from Greencastle, Indiana, was murdered approximately 3 miles from here.
Pearl Bryan was 5.5 months pregnant when she was murdered.
She had been decapitated. Her head was never found.
The grisly and shocking nature of the crime made the headlines.
When her body was found, the police with bloodhounds, they tracked the killers to this very site. At that time, it was a slaughterhouse.
Alonzo Walling and Scott Jackson, 2 medical students with ties to the satanic cult, were arrested. They were captured in the bloody slaughterhouse well. It is believed that Pearl Bryan's murder was a sacrifice to Satan, and that Walling and Jackson used her severed head in an attempt to conjure up demonic forces. Walling and Jackson were convicted and sentenced to die. On the gallows, a life sentence was offered to the men if they would reveal the whereabouts of Pearl Bryan's head.
Both men refused. However, Alonzo Walling swore a curse on the gallows and said that he would come back and haunt this area forever.
This was the legacy Bobby Mackey was to inherit 82 years later. He and Carl had made a pact to try and keep the disturbing events a secret, but it wasn't up to them.
It was a Friday night. I come into Bobby Mackey's, and I was getting all primed up, and come in to go dancing.
Country music enthusiast Rich Lawson is a club regular.
I went to the restroom. I was washing my hands in the wash basin, and there was a garbage can right beside the wash basin. It just, bam, took off real fast. I spun around, and there stood an image of a man. It's like it's staring right through me. The bathroom just got intensely hot, and I'm trying to gasp for breath, and I passed out in the bathroom.
The frightening sounds coming from the men's room alerted retired police officer Larry Hornsby.
I went in the bathroom. It was hot. I mean, red hot. The bathroom couldn't be hot because it didn't have no heat in it. All I heard was kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. I looked around the corner. That garbage can was banging against the stall.
Hornsby discovered Rich passed out on the floor. In a panic, he yelled into Rich's face to revive him.
I said, "Rich, talk to me, talk to me." So I picked up his hand, checked for a pulse. I couldn't find one there. I told him, call 911. I'm losing him. I'm losing him.
It wasn't until the paramedics arrived that Rich Lawson was revived. Later, Larry Hornsby showed Rich Lawson pictures from Doug Hensley's book on the haunting.
This face in this book, just like it came right out. And I almost knocked it in the road, and I told him, get out of my face. Get it away from me.
Rich Lawson identified the ghost that had attacked him as that of Alonzo Walling.
It's no joke. There's evil spirits on this earth, and I've experienced and seen it.
After the attack on Rich Lawson, Doug Hensley began to interview other customers.
I started seeing a common pattern where some of them would see a headless woman. Some would see a dark-haired stranger with a mustache.
Was the headless woman the ghost of Pearl Bryan? And had the angry spirit of Alonzo Walling returned to seek his vengeance? One morning while the club was closed, Bobby's wife, Janet Mackey, was inside doing some work. Janet was 5.5 months pregnant and very afraid because Pearl Bryan was also 5.5 months pregnant at the time of her beheading. Janet's fears were soon confirmed.
A force grabbed her from behind and squeezed her stomach. This invisible force shoved her down the stairs. She toppled down the stairs, 5.5 months pregnant. She said she looked up and she saw the image of a man with a mustache standing at the top of the stairs. Janet went into premature labor and gave birth to a 1 pound, 15.5 ounce baby girl that very night.
Janet Mackey declined to be interviewed for this story. For her, the haunting is frighteningly real. However, she did sign an affidavit.
I, Janet Mackey, have experienced a force that has tried to harm me. I have heard voices that have ordered me from the building. Sometimes It seems that some force has entered my body.
She won't come in here anymore. She never did like the place, and she hasn't been in here for 2 years.
It's my opinion through the investigation that the one ghost is Alonzo Walling. Pearl Bryan's spirit walks this hall. I believe somewhere on this property, Pearl Bryan's head is under this ground.
Pearl Bryan's body lies in a 100-year-old grave in Greencastle, Indiana. To this day, it is traditional for people who visit her grave to leave a Lincoln penny head side up so that Pearl Bryan can have a head once again. A fitting tribute to the ghost of Mackey's Bar. Coming up, a ghostly crew haunts this U.S. aircraft carrier. And later in the show, we continue the hunt for zombies. But first, could these wounds signify the end of the world? We're going in search of Stigmata. It's a shocking spectacle. Ordinary men and women, their hands, head, and feet, bleeding with the wounds of Christ on the cross. Is it a hoax, an astonishing medical phenomenon, or a grave omen foretelling the end of life as we know it? We warn you that some of the footage you're about to see is of a graphic and disturbing nature. These are the scars of Stigmata.
I don't know why he didn't bleed to death. His whole life is beyond medical explanation.
But I think it was just an ongoing, visible sign to generation after generation that this person has been chosen by God.
The bleeding happens every day. It's been happening for 11 years.
Stigmata originated from a Greek word describing a mark or wound, and specifically describes the disturbing phenomenon of a person who displays the sacred wounds of Jesus Christ in the same excruciating manner as how he died on the cross. Shocking evidence seems to support the claims that these three people suffered the stigmata. This story contains rare and startling footage of the strange phenomena, and you should be warned that this subject matter is not for the squeamish.
They literally feel the suffering that Jesus felt when he went through this. They're feeling the piercing of the hands, they're feeling the piercing of the feet, the side wound, the crown of thorns, completing the actual crucifixion of Jesus.
Michael Fries is the author of a book that examines the mystery of Stigmata.
Theologians and the medical people all work together on this, and they've come up with a lot of signs they look for to distinguish authentic stigmata. The wounds are usually permanent. The wounds have fresh red blood, and usually any medical treatment, any ointments, any medicines doesn't affect the bleeding or the wounds.
The first stigmatic that the Catholic Church traditionally recognizes is St. Francis of Assisi.
He received the stigmata and kept the stigmata for 2 years until his death in 1226. Yet there have been 321 reported, alleged, authentic cases of the stigmata since the 13th century, Francis of Assisi's time. And it's a combination of many different types of people, lay people and religious.
An Italian priest, Padre Pio, is considered the most authentic and well-known stigmatic of our generation. He bore the pain of stigmata longer than anyone in history. 50 years, from 1918 until his death in 1968.
It's a very difficult thing to talk about the suffering of Padre Pio, the pain that he endured, because I can tell you he had the 5 wounds, they're medically documented. He was bleeding constantly, every day. At one point the doctors took their fingers, shoved them through the hole in the hand, and they could feel them touching one another inside the wound.
Even more unexplainable was the fact that Padre Pio's wounds literally disappeared right before his death in 1968.
It's a miracle in itself that he would have all these bleeding wounds that didn't infect for all those years, and suddenly they've just disappeared with no scars. That's unheard of in the medical world.
The Catholic Church has already beatified this beloved priest, and he is expected to be canonized as a saint. During the same time that Padre Pio bore the wounds of Christ, another lesser-known stigmatic was also living a bizarre existence in Connersreuth, a small town in Germany. Therese Neumann was born on Good Friday, April 9th, 1898. And it was on Good Friday in 1926 that she experienced the agonizing pain of her first stigmata. For the next 36 years, she bled profusely every Friday, on the day known as Crucifixion Day.
I think in the Gospel of Luke, it talks about Jesus agonizing so much that he sweated or cried tears of blood. And remarkably, she bled horrendously from her eyes all the time when she had her passion ecstasy. She has some 800 different passion ecstasies on a weekly basis throughout her life. And she kept the stigmata up to her death in 1962. But from 1926 on, she stopped eating, except for the Eucharist on a daily basis. And she's been one of the most thoroughly investigated stigmatics in history, and nobody could find any evidence of a hoax or her eating on the side, but she actually didn't lose any weight over the decades, and she gained weight every decade, and she also slept very little, maybe an hour or two a day, all those decades. I believe that we do have many cases of authentic stigmatics in our midst.
There is a current case of a man who lives today in a small seaside community in Italy, not far from the home of Padre Pio. Giorgio Bongiovanni claims to have been bleeding from a variety of wounds on a daily basis for nearly the past 12 years.
This cross on my forehead is the sign that Christ will appear in heaven, and all the world will see him. Jesus will manifest himself. It will be so. That is why I received this sign. In August of 1989, I had an extraordinary vision. I had just left my office, and I was walking toward my car. Suddenly, I saw a being about 20 meters away from me. It was radiating strong light, and it was levitating. I can't really remember if she moved her lips, but I was struck by the graceful movement of her hands. At that moment, I was no longer myself. I was living this incredible experience that filled me with immense joy.
Giorgio believes that it was the Virgin Mary who appeared before him in this vision. She spoke telepathically, instructing him to pray and prepare himself for a mission.
Then she vanished, and I was in shock. I went home distraught.
Later, while on a pilgrimage to Fatima, Portugal, Giorgio found himself walking through the church square when the Holy Vision appeared again.
She explained what my mission to the world was. Then she asked me, "Are you ready to share the suffering of my son?" I answered, "Yes." Then I saw a beam of light come out of the center of her body and hit the palms of my hands. Blood came pouring out of my hands. And that is the moment I received the stigmata. I felt a great deal of pain, excruciating pain, but inside I was serene. For the first 2 years, not only for a day, but for 2 years, I kept feeling such spasms that my whole body shook. I just couldn't stand the pain. Then, a little at a time, my body got used to it. The pain is still there, but now it's more bearable. Only when the wounds start to bleed again, it becomes terrible again.
Giorgio's wounds open and bleed every 24 hours.
If they continue for the rest of my life, then I will spend my life serving the cause as I was told to do.
The mission, as revealed by the Virgin Mary, is for Giorgio to go public with an ominous warning about future events that could lead to a third world war.
I hope this war will never happen. We can still avoid it, but there will be suffering for millions if mankind doesn't change its ways.
Giorgio has submitted himself to examination from doctors who took blood samples and have confirmed that, incredibly, he shows no signs of anemia. Plus, his wounds are inexplicably without infection. Giorgio Bongiovanni has been examined by medical experts, and while none could explain the cause of his stigmata, a medically documented condition called psychogenic purpura has been cited as a possible cause for the phenomenon. Patients with this disorder exhibit painful bruising and swelling beneath the skin. In some cases, blood will seep through the surface of skin that is still intact. This does not explain the gaping wounds evident in stigmatics.
We have not come up with a real feasible medical explanation. All we have is speculation. The significance of the stigmata would have to be taken from a religious point of view, but that's the only place where it would make any sense. It's really something deeper than something scientific. It's something that comes from the depths of a person.
Although Giorgio Bongiovanni's stigmata has been well documented, the Catholic Church is currently unwilling to formally comment on his case.
This sign was given to me to make the people believe, to help me make people aware of my message. But it's their choice whether they want to believe me or not.
It remains a mystery of faith that we ought to believe because of the credibility of the many cases documented. We shouldn't believe all of the cases. We should be skeptical, but be open-minded about it as well.
These are just 3 striking cases, representing hundreds of reports from around the world. Different people, different places, separate lives. All connected by the blood and mystery of stigmata. Next, is it possible to survive your own death and burial? Walk with the living dead in search of zombies. But first, board the warship that the dead refuse to surrender. With this next story, modern-day ghost chasers and long-dead war heroes give new meaning to the term fighting spirit. In 1942, an American aircraft carrier was severely damaged by Japanese gunfire. Now, nearly 6 decades later, her ghostly crew won't give up the ship. A series of haunting encounters seems to prove that the men of the USS Hornet are still manning their battle stations.
Some people have walked through here and actually felt an entity or a being walk right through them.
I saw a very large shadow go across the foot of my bed.
It seems like word has been sent out on the spiritual internet that this is the happening place for guys to come back to retire to.
From time immemorial, man has clung steadfastly to the belief that the dead walk among us. Is it possible that the human soul survives death, taking the form of a ghost? According to believers of the paranormal, ghosts often lurk in places haunted by tragic events of the past. Here, poltergeists and other unearthly spirits are said to torment, and in some cases, physically attack the living. And some say the dead may simply be attending to unfinished business. This is the USS Hornet. According to credible accounts, the souls of dead heroes have made this aging warship their home.
I started to hear stories from our volunteers that were working around the ship of seeing shadows, of seeing shapes in the passageways.
Right over here on that middle catwalk where that door is, I saw a sailor leaning against the railings there, staring down at me while I was restoring the area in here.
All of a sudden, I started feeling something tugging on my leg. And my first thought was, is one of the other guys playing a joke on me here on the ship. And I got up, found my flashlight, and turned it on, and there was nobody there, and there was no walking sound or anybody else around.
These supernatural visitors may have ties to the most brutal war the world has ever known. In April 1942, CV-8, an aircraft carrier designated USS Hornet, was the launch site for the famous Doolittle raid on Tokyo. 6 months later, the Hornet succumbed to enemy fire and plunged into the depths of the Pacific Ocean. 133 sailors lost their lives. But the spirit of the Hornet would live on, with the christening of a new ship, also named USS Hornet. In 1943, the new vessel, which was given the call sign Gray Ghost, embarked on an illustrious career, striking blow after blow against the enemy to avenge the deaths of those 133 sailors. A quarter century later, she enjoyed the honor of picking up the astronauts of Apollo 11. But in 1993, after more than a half century of distinguished service to her country, the USS Hornet's run of good luck came to an end. Obsolete and abandoned, she was offered to scrap metal dealers for a paltry $6 a ton.
We realized that she was such a national treasure that she really shouldn't be scrapped, so a group of people got together and started the Aircraft Carrier Hornet Foundation.
It was a monumental task, and as work progressed on the rusting Leviathan, many of the workers began to sense that they were sharing her with another presence. Rumors of ghosts began to circulate among the men restoring the old aircraft carrier. Had the long-deceased crew of the Hornet come back to help save their beloved ship?
I saw right in the compartment on the Admiral's Bridge in which we're standing right now, a gentleman with a long-sleeved khaki uniform going down the ladder. I don't know what to say about that, except that he turned over his shoulder and looked at me. So I went after him and went down the ladder and called after him. Couldn't find anybody.
I was at my file drawers, which are about 10, 12 feet away, and I had opened a file drawer, and all at once I heard big band music being played in my office. And it's coming from my tape deck, and there's no buttons pushed in my tape deck.
Coming up, Ghostbusters scour the decks to identify the Phantom Commander of the Haunted Hornet.
This program contains images which may be disturbing to younger or sensitive viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
As preservationists attempted to restore the legendary USS Hornet to her former glory, they encountered entities that can only be described as otherworldly. Ghostly apparitions descended ladders, pinched female volunteers, and even appeared on the flight deck. In 1998, the Aircraft Carrier Hornet Foundation faced a critical decision: deny all evidence of the supernatural or confront the possibility that the ship was filled with ghosts. Concerned that the ship's ghostly inhabitants would frighten away tourists, the Foundation called in psychic Stash Murray and renowned paranormal investigator Lloyd Auerbach. Auerbach, an expert witness and consultant for several law enforcement agencies, definitely believes the Hornet is haunted.
The other tri-field is spiking also.
Can feel it.
Quite a bit. When I first walked through the ship, I got sensations. We identified 28 different locations on the ship that were, you can consider hotspots. That's just kind of a euphemism for these are places where people had experiences more than once.
Other room I want to check.
Stash Murray claims to communicate telepathically with the Hornet's ghosts, including one who identified himself as the commanding officer.
When I came aboard the ship, I encountered several spirits and several ghosts. One of the first spirits that I encountered was Admiral J.J. Clark. He once served on the ship in 1944, and several folks have encountered him.
According to records previously unavailable to Stash Murray, J.J. Jocko Clark did serve aboard the Hornet. Other accounts indicate the late Admiral Clark, who was revered by his men for his loyalty and devotion, has appeared numerous times aboard the ship.
On a Saturday morning before the museum was open, and I was going below decks to our main control, which is an engine room, and as I unchained, I noticed that there was an officer walking on the deck right below, coming around to go down the ladder, and this was 4 or 5 seconds until I went out of view. And then I came around and looked down the ladder into the engine room, and there was no one there, and I can't explain it. I saw someone go down to that engine room.
Clark is not alone aboard the ship. Stash Murray speculates that the Admiral might be joined by some of the 133 sailors who perished on the original Hornet. Lost souls returned from the deep.
They came from the CV-8, which was the predecessor of the Hornet, which sunk and had a very tragic loss of many lives. I encountered also many of other folks that had been on this ship at one point or another.
It's a case where we have multiple witnesses citing multiple ghosts, which is very unusual. And it seems like there are more ghosts all the time. So we have an expanding situation. We'd have to say that everything corroborates, all the stories come together. And we've got, in this case, people. You might call them dead people, but they are ghosts, spirits, consciousness, personalities after death, whatever you want to call them, entities, who are here.
So why has a retired aircraft carrier become a favorite gathering place for dozens of ghosts?
What I have noticed on the ship are what I call returned spirits. Whether they died on the ship or in civilian life, they've come by choice specifically to help on a mission.
We think the ghosts are here to help the ship.
I think they come back because when they were on this ship, it was a very exciting time in their life. They were young, they were full of life.
Based upon the eyewitness accounts, it appears that the camaraderie of men in arms and the deadly drama of combat has turned the USS Hornet into a hub of supernatural events. Through more than 150 documented reports of ghostly events on board the Hornet, her former crew members have returned to immortalize both their love and devotion to a ship once known as the Gray Ghost. Next on In Search Of. Could one sip of a sinister potion actually turn someone into a zombie? It may have happened to this man. Could it happen to you? Voodoo dolls, black magic, the living dead. Images from the darkest reaches of the supernatural so frightening that we exile them to the realm of myth. But one man's documented escape from his own burial and spellbound enslavement has forced skeptics and scientists alike to confront this reality. The undead may actually walk among us. The destination is Haiti, in search of zombies. This man's gentle demeanor hides a horrifying fact. He has dwelled in a hidden world of black magic, blood rituals, and secret societies. And he endured a nightmarish existence that few can imagine, as a zombie. The world has long been fascinated by voodoo, a religion steeped in mystery and misunderstanding. In reality, this exotic fusion of tribal African rituals and Roman Catholic beliefs is both a positive and powerful force, a force capable of healing the sick and chasing away evil spirits. Most people practice voodoo for good, but some people also practice hoodoo, which is negative magic or sorcery.
Zombification really is a form of capital punishment for, people who have, created upheaval or been very destructive in, voodoo society.
This process of zombification is apart from the religion of voodoo in all its beauty. It is a type of, at least the darkest or the most wicked of black magic.
A zombie, by folk definition, is the living dead. It's an individual who's had his or her soul stolen from them by sorcery in such a way that it brings on a state of apparent death, flinging them into a kind of perpetual purgatory, an uncertain fate, but a fate that is invariably said to be marked by enslavement.
According to hoodoo legend, a person marked for punishment by a bokor or sorcerer is robbed of their soul, thus committing them to the ranks of the undead. It would be easy to dismiss such stories as mere superstition, for few people have ever met a zombie. Until now. This is the story of Clervius Narcisse, zombie. This horrifying true story began with a mysterious illness. Haitian villager Clervius Narcisse had been admitted to Albert Schweitzer Hospital, complaining of a high fever and body aches. 2 days later, he died and was promptly buried. This is the official death certificate for Clervius Narcisse, signed by 2 doctors, one of whom was an American. Years later, Clervius's sister was shopping in a local market in Port-au-Prince when a strange man approached her. He introduced himself using a childhood nickname known only to the Narcisse family. Though initially taken aback by this bizarre encounter, the young woman soon recognized the stranger. It was her brother, the late Clervius Narcisse. Coming up, had he risen from the grave? The shocking truth when we come back. It was the story that shocked the world. A Haitian villager whose death had been witnessed and certified by 2 physicians claimed that he had risen from the grave and been a zombie. It was well known that shortly before his death, Clervius Narcisse had been embroiled in numerous disputes with his brother and other members of their village. It is believed that these clashes provoked the wrath of a Bokor, who then used black magic to turn Narcisse into a zombie.
This process of creating a zombie is in retaliation for some wrong or some alleged wrong.
Clervius Narcisse describes his descent into the world of the undead.
He heard everything when he was put in the coffin, when he was put in the grave, and he was showing you a scar here. It was a nail from his coffin.
When they bury the person, they put him in the grave, he's fully alive. He can see, he can hear, but he cannot talk and cannot move.
After his burial, Clervius was pulled from the grave by the magic of the Bokor. He claims he was one of 150 zombies who served as slaves on the sorcerer's plantation, until his escape. His macabre tale spread like wildfire throughout the island of Haiti, and eventually, the world. But many questions remained. How could this man who was declared dead by 2 different doctors, then buried, return in seemingly perfect health? Dr. Wade Davis, a leading expert on zombies and author of the best-selling book, The Serpent and the Rainbow, was fascinated by this story. He traveled to Haiti in search of zombies and the secret of their creation.
I was looking for something that could bring on the semblance of death so profoundly that it could fool a Western-trained physician, such that the victim of the preparation could be brought to the edge of death only to return to the realm of the living.
Wondering what might cause the death-like state of people believed to be zombies, Davis used his contacts to obtain the Bokor's formula. He discovered that the ingredients were straight out of a witch's brew. 2 freshly killed lizards, several plants, the carcass of a large toad, a pufferfish, and human bones. Though the Bokor considered the human bones to be the most potent part of this elixir, Wade Davis believed that the true culprit was the pufferfish.
What makes them unique is that they have in their viscera and on the surface of their skin an extremely powerful neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin. Now, this poison is seriously lethal.
Davis and other scientists believe that, in small amounts, poison from the pufferfish would plunge someone into a trance-like state, rendering them a zombie.
You know, it's black magic of the worst kind. I don't think anything could ever justify that, no more than taking a gun and blowing somebody's brains out for an alleged ill could ever be justified.
Though Wade Davis made great strides in the effort to unlock the dark secrets of the zombie's creation, some still dispute his findings. For them, the shadowy world that separates medical fact from mystical legend and the living from the dead remains a mystery. Thanks for watching In Search Of. I'm Mitch Pileggi. Good night.